Texas A&M is coming off of a massive win over the Auburn Tigers in College Station. Here's what that means.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are Locked On the Texas A&M Aggies. I am your host, Matt Galatzan, publisher of Texas A&M Aggies on SI. Thank you for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Zach, Texas A&M is coming off of a huge win over the Auburn Tigers this past weekend. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't the high-scoring affair that I think a lot of us predicted, but it was close. It was hard-fought. Texas A&M's defense really came to play, and stifled that Auburn rushing attack and that Auburn offense in a way that I don't think a lot of us expected. Plus, the ground game really got going. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to give out our game balls for our MVPs of the game. We're going to give our best position grades through our whatever positions we felt performed the best in the game, and then we're going to get into a little bit of an early preview of the upcoming matchup versus Mississippi State this weekend, which might be a little bit tougher than a lot of people imagined heading into the season. Yep. But Zach, just an excellent performance from that A&M defense over the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And you said huge win, and a lot of people may go, Auburn didn't look too great. How is it a huge win? First of all, any win in the SEC is a huge win, especially this season when it seems like a lot of these teams are, going to be a lot more competitive than last season. And the reason that Auburn didn't look good is because of A&M's defense. Mm-hmm. And so let's be real about that. Any win is a huge win, and especially when you can, pick up that first conference win is for sure big. So yeah, like you said, wasn't pretty by any means. Mike Elko obviously acknowledged that with the penalties. That was really the only thing that was holding A&M back was the major penalties. Because if not for a bunch of flags on the field, I think it took off at least one touchdown, took off a bunch of big plays. Off the board. So obviously that game, final score could have been a lot different if not for the flags. But if you're going to be a championship contender, you're going to have to win games in different ways. And we saw A&M win a shootout against Notre Dame, and we saw them win a defensive battle against Auburn. And so if you can win different kind of games like that, you're obviously putting yourself in the championship conversation. Still a long way to go, obviously. But you love to see that if you're an Aggies fan, because winning games like that in different ways is huge.
Yeah, and this is a big one in another sense as well, in my opinion. So often coming off of a big win in the past, Texas A&M has kind of faltered the following week. It's a lot of people have described it as battered Aggie syndrome. I've never been a fan of that term. I think it's a little bit hyperbolic. But it to people it exists, and I'll accept that. But part of that was that coming off of this big win, you'd have a letdown the next week, and it seemed like clockwork to a lot of people. The 8-4 stigma, all that BS. But here, you go into SEC play, you get a win over what is a really good Auburn team. I know Jackson Arnold didn't perform particularly well. That had a lot to do with the Texas A&M defense. Those receivers were shut down. It's big for a lot of reasons. It's big because you get your first SEC win. It's big because you beat a good team, but most importantly, you keep your momentum going into what is going to be another very tough matchup against Mississippi State this upcoming weekend. So, who's responsible for those wins? Or this win? You could put it on a lot of people. You could give a lot of people credit. We're each going to give out our game ball though. I'm going to go first, Zach. My game ball on the offensive side goes to Le'Veon Moss. He's coming off of this big injury that he had last year. Seemed like it was taking him a little while to get into the rhythm of things, really the running game to get into the rhythm of things over the first couple of weeks. They showed up against Notre Dame in a big way. Le'Veon Moss had 3 touchdowns, but here he has his best game of the season, really his best game since Man, probably like LSU or something last year. I'd have to go back and look. He goes 21 carries for 139 yards and a touchdown. He leads the rushing attack that was really the bread and butter for Texas A&M all day long, and it's statistically it's his best. Well, if you okay, we're going back and we're looking at the stats here, Zach. This may be a Texas A&M career high. Is that right? This is a
I actually
Texas
was not
A&M
aware of that.
career high in rushing for Le'Veon Moss. It's his best game since Missouri last year in October. He had 12
Yep.
carries for 138 yards and
The Missouri game. Yeah.
and 3 touchdowns. This is his highest rushing total as a Texas A&M Aggie, and he definitely deserves it.
Yeah, for sure. You kind of felt like maybe the first 2 weeks of the season, there was, talk about, A&M's rushing attack, both on defense and on offense, wasn't really there. I've kind of felt like, though, they were maybe, holding back Le'Veon Moss and, Reuben Owens a little bit. And, they didn't want to, put too much, tread on their tires, I guess you could say, over the first 2 weeks, kind of save them for Notre Dame. And, against Notre Dame, it wasn't like, super productive necessarily when it comes to yardage, but he had 3 touchdowns in the first half. So that was obviously huge. And in the red zone there. But yeah, he got 1 yard more than he did against Missouri last season. So new career high there on 21 attempts, touchdown as well. Yeah, that Missouri game last year was a beatdown. So yeah, how can we forget that one? But yeah, love to see that from Le'Veon Moss, especially how last season ended, and you really like to see him be healthy the rest of the way. But for my game ball, I'm going to go to the other side. I think it's pretty obvious. I guess not super obvious. There's a lot of guys on defense that played well, but by far the best player on defense on Saturday was Taurean York. 7 total tackles, 6 of those were solo. Had a sack, had a pass breakup. This guy has just been has been money for A&M since last season on defense. And if the Aggies are going to do anything this season when it comes to contending for another SEC championship, contending for the CFP, he's going to be a major reason why. And Mike Elko yesterday, was speaking to the media. He raved about Taurean York. He talked about how Edgar and Cooper. He had more athleticism when he was in College Station, but and so he'd be able to see a play and a little bit late and then make up for it with his athleticism. But Mike Elko said that Taurean York, may not be the most athletic guy, but he sees and recognizes plays instantly, and that really helps him. He pointed out a tight end screen that Taurean York blew up yesterday or on Saturday. And it just goes to show how smart this guy is when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. And yeah, so Taurean York, I think by far gets the game ball there on defense. Kind of interesting little thing here as well. Anthony Hill, Texas linebacker, former A&M commit at one point. Yesterday during Texas media availability, he actually said that Taurean York is one of the linebackers that he likes to watch, in the country. Anthony Hill pointed out LSU's linebackers. He didn't say any by name, but he actually pointed out York by name because they're kind of familiar with each other a little bit there. So pretty interesting there. It goes to show how York has been recognized nationally. If he wasn't recognized nationally already, he certainly is, after this performance. And, can only go up from here, of course, because I think this guy is just ultra talented.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of the top linebackers in the SEC, right there with Anthony Hill and Whit Weeks and so many other talented linebackers in this conference. It's hard to find a better one than Taurean York, and he's going to have a long NFL career in front of him after he's done in College Station. He's going to be remembered as one of the best ones in College Station for a long time, and it's because he steps up in big time moments like against Auburn, and he played well against Notre Dame as well. So I expect that to continue going forward. All right, Zach, let's take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some position groups that we thought really stood out in the Auburn win. I'm going to go offense once again. Zach's probably going to go defense, I would imagine. But stick with us after this break, and we'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love the most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. I love how fast it kicks in, and that's sugar free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later when I'm up at a late night and at Kyle Field. Don't have to worry about those crashes, so that's always a good thing. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon today. All right, Zach. There was a lot of contention about the way that Texas A&M played on Saturday from a few people, mainly about their offense. A lot of people weren't happy with the way that Marcel Reed played, even though he was fine, in my opinion. It wasn't his best game ever statistically, but he did fine. The offensive line was a little bit leaky, but for the most part, I thought it was a good performance. The scoring wasn't there. The explosive plays that A&M has been so used to getting in the passing game over the first few weeks, those just weren't there here. And that's in part largely due because Auburn has an extremely talented secondary and an extremely talented defense. But overall, pretty happy with the way Texas A&M played, specifically defensively. I thought they were fantastic all the way around. But it's time to give our position grades. We each picked one position group that we think really stood out above the rest here. And I'll go first, Zach. I know I just talked a lot about Le'Veon Moss, but this running back group as a whole was fantastic in my opinion. They probably get if we're grading this on a A plus to on like a school scale, we'll say I'm going to give these running backs an A plus. We talked about Le'Veon Moss with his career high 139 yards rushing and the touchdown, but it goes beyond that as well. Uh, you know, Reuben Owens was extremely explosive, 3 carries for 52 yards, long of 33. Amari Daniels was very reliable. He had 12 carries for 42 yards. Those two guys combined for 94 yards. The A&M rushing attack overall, if you take Marcel Reed's 7 carries for minus 23 yards out of there, you get something around. I hate doing math live on air, but we're going to use a calculator real quick. You get 20 carries for 184 yards. 40 carries for 184 yards, which comes out to really healthy 4.6 yards per carry. Just really great overall stuff from the running backs there. And if they can continue to do this, and Auburn has a decent run defense, if they can continue to do this in SEC play, even when the passing game and the explosive plays aren't there, they're going to be pretty successful offensively.
Yeah, obviously Auburn's offense, not too great, and that was due to A&M's defense. But Auburn's defense is legit, in my opinion. I mean, they made some great plays, and so to be able to rush for these kind of numbers against them, especially when you could see it coming, if you're Auburn's, defense, that's pretty impressive. So, yeah, I maybe outside of Notre Dame, A&M's got to have one of the best running back rooms in the country. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Reuben Owens with the explosiveness, Amari Daniels not necessarily as explosive, but like you said, reliable, and Le'Veon Moss just a big combination of both of those. And when you have a star running back, leading the way, and then you have 2 really nice guys, right behind him. Not a lot of teams have that luxury, and they may have to lean on just one guy, and so yeah, really impressive there. And I'll continue to vouch for the banning rushing yards counting towards quarterback sacks, because this makes these numbers just look super bad on Marcel Reed's part. Obviously, he didn't lose 23 rushing yards. That kind of stuff makes me mad. I don't understand why college does that, but that's the topic for another day. Yeah, for my position group, I'm going to go with the defensive backs, and I'm going to go with an A. And some people might say, what about an A plus? I'm going to be a little bit picky here. Didn't get the interception that you would have liked from Jackson Arnold. I think obviously, they're being a little bit conservative through the air, and that was also probably due in part to the way A&M was defending Auburn's receivers. But if they had maybe gotten that turnover through the air, maybe I'll go with an A plus. Maybe that's a little bit picky. Oh well. probably an A goes as well to the defensive line. But for the secondary, it's hard not to be impressed with what they did. Des Ricks, Dalton Brooks, Will Lee the third, all those guys. That is an elite group this year. I think last year there were some times, and Mike Elko actually talked about this on Monday. There was times last year where they'd look on tape at the secondary and they would go, "Oh man," this is kind of his words. He would go, "Oh man, thank God that the quarterback didn't look that way because that guy got wide open." But he says that the tape is a lot more clean this year. They're not allowing, not many open plays. I know Notre Dame kind of had some success in that regard, but it's clear that the secondary is playing a lot better this year, and which is really nice to see because they returned a lot of the same guys, and so it's not like they had to go in the transfer portal. Yeah, they added Julian Humphrey. He hasn't quite made the big impact you would expect so far this season, but so when you're able to improve while returning a lot of the same guys, that just goes to show where this program is headed. And so yeah, secondary gets an A for me. 3 pass breakups. Taurean York was one of those pass breakups, so maybe 2 pass breakups from the secondary. But when you limit Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton Jr. To well below what they usually are able to finish with. I mean, Cam Coleman 4 catches for 18 yards. His long was 5 yards. I mean, that is just elite stuff right there because there was so much talk going into the game about how dynamic those receivers were, and A&M backed it up and said we're not going to hear any of that. So really impressive there, especially at the end of the game when Auburn had to pass in the final few minutes. They didn't even cross midfield in those final 3 possessions they had when they had a chance to maybe take the lead. And it wasn't relatively close for them because A&M's defense was just so locked down on those final 3 possessions. So yeah, secondary, hard to not be impressed with them, but you want to see consistency moving forward, and see if they can build off of this even further. Because like we were saying, Mike Elko, said last season there's some leaky moments, and against Notre Dame, obviously, gave up some big plays as well. So you just want to build off of this moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And Will Lee the third in particular, I thought was fantastic. He nearly had a pick there that I guess they called it incomplete. Probably should have been reviewed. But when you're going up against a guy like Cam Coleman, who, when I was doing my crossover pod with Locked on Auburn Zach Blackerby last week, I called Cam Coleman Superman because he was making incredible plays against Oklahoma. Yep. And I thought if he can do that against the Oklahoma secondary, which is a really, really good secondary, he could probably do some pretty special things as well against an A&M secondary that has struggled to stop the pass to a certain extent this year, especially against Notre Dame. They were a little leaky as well. So I expected him to have a pretty big game. And he got, with Will Lee the third covering Cam Coleman, Coleman had 3 targets, 1 reception for 4 yards, -1 yard after the catch. The blanket indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Will Lee the third is a dude. I'm going to give you one more position grade, just a little bonus one. Since Zach went with the secondary there, I'm going to go with the Texas A&M wide receivers. I know they didn't have a huge game, but I still give them an A because Casey Concepcion was just a dude on Saturday. Mario Craver finally got a relatively pedestrian performance considering what he's done the rest of the season. He only had 4 catches for 34 yards, but Casey Concepcion comes up big. 7 catches, 113 yards, really helped keep the ball moving. He had an explosive in there with 24 yards, so that was great to see out of him. And then you talk about Amari Nyblack. I know he's a tight end, but 1 catch for 23 yards. Ashton Bethel-Rumman, 1 catch for 18 yards. Terry Bussey, 1 catch for 10 yards. They made the catches that they needed to make at the right times, and that was huge for the offense. So I'm gonna let's give him a B+ actually instead of an A. I'm gonna be a little picky too because I thought that there should have been a couple more in there, but that may be more so on Marcel Reed than anything else.
Yeah, quick note on the receivers. Concepcion and Craver. The luxury that you have whenever you have one guy being able to go for 100 yards one game, the other guy is able to flip flop that. That's great right there. And Craver actually had a touchdown called back, so those numbers, a little bit deceiving there. So yeah, I'm with you there. Big day for those receivers for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's take our second break, Zach. When we come back, we're going to get into an early preview of the matchup with Mississippi State in a game that, it's a big spread right now. I think that this game could be closer than the experts think, as the great Lee Corso would say. But we'll tell you why, and when we come back after this break. Stick with us. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo, formerly known as OpenPhone. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is Quo. It's some great it's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer service communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. Their built-in AI agent is a game changer. It can answer after-hours call, capture leads, and keep business moving even when you're off the clock. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly OpenPhone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here and FanDuel has an offer for you. Or excuse me, the NFL season is here and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, Zach. 1-0 in the SEC so far for Texas A&M against an Auburn team that I know was not ranked but was very good. So it was a big win for Texas A&M, especially to get that proverbial monkey off their back, whatever you want to call it, with the let down after a big win versus Notre Dame. They got another tough one this week, Mississippi State. Before the season, this game did not necessarily look like it was going to be an issue. Mississippi State was picked as one of the last, the lower teams in the SEC. The problem is every team in the SEC seems pretty good this year. We'll say Kentucky's half good. Maybe they can beat you if you have an off day. They almost beat Ole Miss.
All right.
But Mississippi State already has a big win to their name. They beat Arizona State earlier in the year. They took Tennessee, who I think is a tremendous football team, to overtime and really a heartbreaker there for the Bulldogs against the Volunteers. They can push you. They got an efficient offense. Jeff Lebby knows what he's doing there. That defense has gotten better as well. They're going to be a tough out for anybody in the SEC on their schedule. Texas A&M is opening as a 14.5-point favorite over the Bulldogs. I'm not sure how I feel about that. The game is in College Station, which gives you a little bit more reason to be confident if you're a Texas A&M fan. But that cover number seems extremely high.
Yeah, I think that Mississippi State's offense shouldn't be overlooked, and because of that, I think that they can definitely cover in this game. Covering is one thing, winning is another thing, obviously. But yeah, I think this game could be pretty close, just like with the Auburn game. I know his final score is a little bit deceiving, but still was within one touchdown there at the end. I can see the same thing happening here. The thing with Mississippi State is they were the worst in the SEC last year. But they didn't have Blake Shapen, veteran quarterback. He got injured, I believe it was before the Texas game that Mississippi State played. and he was out for the whole year, if I'm not mistaken. So
Mm-hmm.
having him back in the fold, that could be huge for them. And obviously we've seen that it's huge having him healthy because beating Arizona State. I know Arizona State maybe not as good as they were last season, but that was still a big win, thrilling win. And then being able to take Tennessee right down to the wire there, man, that was a crushing loss for them. And if anything, if you're Texas A&M and if you're an Aggie fan, you kind of wish maybe Mississippi State won that game because now they are going to be pretty mad coming into College Station because that was a heartbreaking way to lose. If they had won, being able to ride that emotional high of potentially
Mm-hmm.
beating Tennessee, maybe there's a letdown against A&M, but now they're going to be pretty motivated going into College Station. So A&M absolutely should not overlook them at all. But yeah, I think this is going to be a big game for sure. A lot closer than people would expect, especially like you said, coming into the year. I don't think a lot of people expected Mississippi State to be as productive as they have been. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and so Texas A&M's big, their big Achilles heel so far this season, and I hate to be a broken record, but their big Achilles heel this year has been stopping the run still. They did a better job of it against Auburn, but they obviously had a really tough time with UTSA, who has one of the leading rushers in college football. If you go look at the stats updated after this past weekend, um, Robert Henry Jr. for UTSA is second in the nation in rushing yards with 624. He averages 156 yards per game, which is the most in the country. He only got passed because they had a bye week, and Ahmad Hardy from Missouri continued to ball out. He now has 730 yards through 5 games and 9 touchdowns. That guy's insane. But they did better against Utah State, and then Notre Dame got the better of them. Granted, they have one of the best running back groups in the country. And then this past weekend against Auburn, it was a much better performance against the run, particularly against Jackson Arnold, who has really been the driving force behind that rushing attack for the most part this season. They held him to 52 yards rushing overall. Jackson Arnold only had 11 yards rushing. Jeremiah Cobb had 6 carries for 28 yards. They need to run the ball a lot more, though, in my opinion. That's another conversation entirely. This isn't an Auburn podcast, so we're not going to get into it. But Mississippi State can run the football, and they can run the football really well, Zach. If you go and look at this past game against Tennessee, they got pretty much anything they wanted to on the ground. Fluff Bothwell, excuse me, had 23 carries for 134 yards, 5.8 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. Davin Booth had 17 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown. Overall, 57 carries for 198 yards. And 3 touchdowns. And now you got to take Blake Shapen's minus 21 yards rushing out of there, and on the 5 sacks. So that's more like 52 carries for 177 yards, I guess, which comes out to about 3.4 yards per carry, which isn't fantastic, but it's still solid. It keeps you ahead of the chains. And Fluff Bothwell, God, that's difficult to say, is a problem. He's 5'10", 230 pounds. He's a big dude, and he can run through you. So that is going to be something to watch for sure for Texas A&M. If they can stop this guy and they can keep this rushing game in check, then I think that they're going to have a much easier time, because Blake Shapen isn't the most prolific passer in the entire world. He was 18 for 29 with a touchdown and a pick and 180 yards against Tennessee. He is he's completing 65.9% of his passes this year. He's got 8 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards. So he's been pretty good, but first defense he really saw that gave him any kind of issues was this Tennessee defense. I think A&M's defense is better than Tennessee's overall, particularly against the pass, so we'll see what happens there. But we'll talk more about Mississippi State throughout the week. Zach's going to join me again on Thursday, and we'll give our picks and do all that kind of thing, and really get into a more in-depth preview of some players to watch and those kinds of things. But that's going to do it for another episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank you so much for making Locked On Aggies your first listen today. But hey, it's another big moment for Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. It's a college football preview that only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season only on Fire TV. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, give me a follow over on Texas A&M Aggies on SI and on X at Matt Galatzan. Follow Zach on X at Zach Dimmitt 7 with 2 M's and 2 T's. And we will see you next time. I got to learn how to say Fluff Bothwell.
Fluff. That is kind of tough. That's a tongue twister.
That's a tough one, man.